Well, people seem to enjoy my last deck tech, so here's another one for you based around my favourite commander from the past year or so. Tatyova Benthic Druid is a very powerful lands matter/landfall commander. Her ability simply reads, landfall, gain a life, draw a card. I don't know why they didn't just use the landfall keyword here. I'm guessing it's because that keyword is reserved for cards from Zendikar and Tatyova is from Dominaria. I don't know, and it doesn't matter anyway. On with the deck tech. A pretty obvious strategy with Tatyova and Simic/green decks in general is to ramp in the early game into bigger spells for the mid to late game. Nature's Law, Cultivate, Harrow, Explosive Vegetation, Sakura Tribelder, Nissa Vastwood Seer and Wood Elves are great to cast in the early game, as not only do they get us closer to throwing out our commander, but we also have more incentive to carry on ramping with these cards after our commander is already in play. But with the deck having 41 lands, we often start the game with more lands than we typically like to in hand. That's where we take advantage of cards that allow us to play multiple lands a turn. Exploration, Burgeoning, Wayward Swordtooth, Oracle of Muldiah, and the powerhouse that is Azusa, Lost But Seeking, all allow us to play multiple lands per turn. Handy if you're trying to get into your Tatyova, or you just like incremental life gain and card draw. But you might be forgiven for wondering whether or not these are dead cards once we don't have any lands left in our hand. After all, Tatyova is going to draw us a lot of cards, but there's no guarantee that she's going to draw us into more lands. That's where these two come in. Crucible of Worlds and Ramunap both allow us to play lands from our graveyard, and if you run the fetches, which I recommend you do, you are always going to have at least one land in the bin. Imagine Crucible and Azusa on the field at the same time. That means you can play 3 fetches from your graveyard in one turn. Now put Tatyova into play, and not only are you playing 3 lands in one turn without even touching your hand, but you're also drawing 3 cards and negating the life lost from the fetches at the same time as well. This might seem like magical Christmas land, but believe me, I've played a lot of Tatyova, and this board state is perfectly feasible, especially when you consider that you can make said plays occur with a combination of any of the following cards. So we've established that we can play lands all day long, be it from our hand, deck or graveyard, but how about we get even more value from our landfall triggers? This way we get value from lands entering without even having to spend a single bit of mana. Lotus Cobra will give us mana with landfall and goes great with the fetches we mentioned earlier. This card is criminally underplayed and can really gain you a lot of mana, especially if you play multiple lands a turn like we want to. Courser of Kruphix not only allows you to play a land off the top, but also gains you a bit of life when you play a land. And anyone who's played Tireless Tracker knows how powerful and how much value you can gain from that card. The card draw from the clues isn't as powerful here as it is in other decks, but it doesn't hurt to have some other means of card draw in case your opponent does manage to deal with your commander. Rampaging Baloths will give you a free 4/4 beast whenever a land enters under your control. You get so much value from this card that you don't even have to worry about playing more creatures. Just hold on to the ones that are in your hand and wait for the inevitable board wipe. Royal Elemental lets you take control of your opponent's creatures. With this you really throw a spanner into the works for your opponent, especially if their deck relies heavily on having their commander in play, or better yet, steal something that benefits you greatly, like your opponent's Lord Windgrace or Primeval Titan, one of which we have in the deck by the way. And there's nothing to stop you slamming down an Avenger of Zendikar followed up by a couple of land drops to take the army of plant tokens you've just made from 0/1s straight up to 2/3s and beyond. There's also another landfall card that isn't as obvious as the others, another criminally underplayed card, especially for 1v1 online where I tend to spend my time. Nissa Vital Force, a planeswalker that is incredibly easy to grab the emblem with. She protects herself with a huge 5/5, and then the turn after she comes out you've got yourself an ultimate. Now for the rest of the game, whenever a land enters on your side of the field you draw a card. You don't even need to worry about having your commander in play once you've got this emblem. I've been sounding the klaxon on this planeswalker since she was released, and according to my excursions online, I appear to be the only one playing her. She's an incredibly powerful card in Lands Matter, so get one picked up for yourselves and thank me later. Now considering we seem to care so much about landfall in this deck, Why don't we include some means of replaying the lands that we already have in play? Trade routes lets us bounce a land just to play it again, or we can ditch a land and play it from the graveyard if we have Ramunap or Crucible in play. Sylvan Safekeeper does something similar in protecting your creatures, but also allowing more landfall from the graveyard. Then there's Gush, which we can cast for free on our opponent's turn, and then play the lands we bounce the turn after, and Tragic Lesson does something similar except we actually have to pay for that one. A Boro is a land that bounces itself, so coupled with Azusa, you can play and bounce a Boro for as many times as you're allowed to play lands this turn. More lands in hand equals more landfall triggers equals more card draw, etc. and so forth, so all these are worthy inclusions in the deck. But it's seldom a deck ever works based on its core mechanic alone, and this deck's no different. We do have utility and removal cards thrown into the mix too, as well as a few control cards as well. Rexage, Acidic Slime and Worldbreaker are great artifact, enchantment and land removal, plus Worldbreaker can keep coming back, as well as give you a land to play from the bin if you can. Beasts Within, Pongify and Deglamour are in the deck as instant speed spot removal. I started playing with Deglamour and Unravel the Ether when the original gods were released, as these cards were great removal for them. I like to keep at least one in my decks nowadays, as indestructible artifacts and gods still crop up from time to time. Curse of the Swine and Cyclonic Rift are our two board wipes. I'm pretty sure it's actually against the law now to play a blue deck without Rift, but don't quote me on that. Eternal Witness, Prophet of Kruphix, Sower of Temptation and Heroic Intervention need no explanation. I will just say that Prophet isn't going to make you any friends, and I'm not sure of its legality in other formats, as I play 1 vs 1 on Magic Online, but play it if you can because it's an incredibly powerful card in Commander. Mystic Snake, Mana Drain and Pact of Negation are our counterspells for the deck. I find that we go off faster than our opponent can mess with us, so I didn't see too much need for counter magic, but add more if you feel as though you need it. We're nearly done now, but I did want to mention a couple of cards before we wrap up that wouldn't fit into any other category. Sylvan Awakening is a great finisher for the deck, as you're going to have lots of lands in play. It may be that your opponents think they're safe after a board wipe or two, with no creatures in play. After casting this, you'll have a heap of creatures to swing in with, and hopefully get lethal on your opponent. Then there's Alhamrit's Archive, an auto include in this deck as far as I'm concerned. What's better than gaining a life and drawing a card off of landfall? Drawing 2 cards and gaining 2 life, multiple times. As for the mana base, we do have some utility included like Wasteland, Command Beacon, Glacial Chasm, Maze of Ith, a Boro and Reliquary Tower, all of which are self-explanatory. We also run all the fetches we can lay our hands on. These don't have to be the expensive ones, but it is preferable. It depends entirely on your budget, of course. Then we have lands that can produce multiple amounts of mana, particularly Gaia's Cradle. Cradle taps for obscene amounts of mana, then you can sacrifice it to Worldbreaker or Sylvan Safekeeper, then replay it with Crucible, then tap it again, and so on and so forth. Do this multiple times and you can pretty much do whatever you want. So how's that? I'm guessing if you made it this far into the video then you're actually interested in making a Tatyova deck like this one. If you want to know how it runs, you can check out the gameplay videos I have up on this channel. A link to the playlist is in the description. As ever, I'm Tribalkai on the EDH channel, and I hope you enjoyed this deck tech of Tatyova Benthic Druid. Thank you for watching.